Hi guys, today I'm bringing you a very special video. I'm here with Jojo and Cory, two top Ryzeal Beast players. I'm going to be talking a very interesting discussion about crossover breakers. So you guys are planning to play crossover breakers format with Ryzeal Beast with any of the new decks coming out, or you're simply curious about a new TCG format for December 2024, this content is for you. First I want to introduce my two amazing guests. I'm very glad we were able to get together. Especially the first one, Jojo. You are all the way in Australia, and I know you're a content creator. You are also WCQ Oceania, a top player. How are things going? How's everything in the other side of the world right now?
It's great. Thank you, first of all, for having me. This is a long time coming. Happy to be here. Been a big fan of a lot of your videos. You're one of the big reasons why I even started playing the decks, so it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, what can I say? The oceanic scene, it's in some ways it's really similar, in some ways it's really different from North America, and yeah, overall it's pretty standard, I would say. I'm very excited to have this discussion with you, and yeah, thanks again for having me.
I'm glad to have you. I really appreciate you guys having here, because I know you are a very, I mean, you're one of the top players with the deck. And also, talking about top players with the deck, we also have Cory, who in the US went from back-to-back regional wins, and not only that, he went back-to-back regional tops with the Ryzeal Beast deck. Hey Cory, how things going, man? And how is the crossover format testing going so far?
So far so good when it comes to crossover breakers testing. When I was testing like the Ryzeal matchup, it was going like way better than I was expecting it to go.
Right.
But I don't know if that was because of like the matchup or my opponent not really knowing what my cards did, because that definitely like contributed to the regional streak I went on when I won Rosemont before the ban list, won Milwaukee after the ban list, and then got top 8 at Columbus like the following weekend, which I didn't even plan on attending. But my friends were like, "You've won back-to-back. Like you got to keep going until like you stop." And then like I topped the last one, and there hasn't really been a regional in my area since. We have Indy this coming weekend, so maybe I can win again with the deck and just kind of keep it going.
For sure, keep the streak alive, you know. Right now you mentioned some interesting things, and now I'm hyped up because I want to know about this tech and how everything's going with the testing. And I know both you guys are preparing for a YCS Anaheim is in December between December 7 and 8 in that weekend. And I know you're traveling half around the world to go ahead and make it to the YCS. But something interesting happened the day before the YCS, and it's on December 6th is the release of crossover breakers. And I think before we get started with crossover breakers, it would be a good to position ourselves on where we are at with the format. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's go over the last couple of results that we have from big events. Here mainly in NA, where the last YCS and the remote YCA take place. So we definitely see a dominance from fire decks. And apart from that, Jubel is kind of sneaking in, and this is YCS Nagara. And also, the event that happened at the moment of recording, happened a week ago, also have the NA Remote Duels, also has a clear dominance by fire decks. Tenpai at the top in this case, and now we have the Snake Eyes and Snake Eyes Farking, followed by Jubel and also Centurion. Now, this is the current format for November 2024. We're mentioning about December. So what's coming up on December? In December, crossover breaker is coming out, and there is 2 new contenders. I'm gonna go over in detail over each one of those 2. But first, I wanna show you guys how things are doing in the OCG once these new cards coming out, and why things so important for you guys to know about this new deck coming out. So I have here the 3 reports that came right after crossover breakers in the OCG. We can see here the first one. We see a deck here that is called Ryzeal, and then we have the Snake Eyes, Tempais, and we have this Maliss deck, and Jubel and Centurion. So you can see Ryzeal immediately, just when it came out, took most of the top over the OCG. Now we see next report, we also have Ryzeal even a higher amount of stopping, with Maliss close second, and these decks are the 2 decks you guys are gonna have to face on December. If we see the last of the 3 I'm gonna show today, over 50% Ryzeal and Maliss. So these decks are gonna definitely be decks you will need to prepare for when you are talking about the December format after crossover breakers. Now, one thing I think will be very useful, now we know more or less what changed for crossover breakers, is to go over why these 2 decks are doing this. You know, why are these decks stopping so much? Why are they so good? And I'm gonna give you guys one each, and I don't know which one of you want to take which, but I want to start with Ryzeal, since it's the deck that we see most represented here. And I want to know if one of you guys can give me why the Ryzeal deck is so good, and what are we expecting here? What style of play does he have? What we are looking forward to on December with Ryzeal?
So yes, what to say? I think with Ryzeal, immediately what stands out about it is that it's sort of a hybrid of Zodiac and Sprite, I would say, together. However, what makes the deck especially interesting is the fact that a lot of its ways to start playing are through inherent summoning. So they're not really effects that start a chain, they just summon and they do something. So all of the Ryzeals are obviously 1-card combos, and the reason why the deck is because, like Snake Eye, it's not like you're playing 12 or 15 normal summons, you're playing 12 or 15 normal summons and extenders. So that already in itself is what makes the deck crazy, because you can draw any permutation of Ryzeal or Tachyon, or obviously we won't have that for the TCG or Bonfire, and all of these cards are going to be starters or extenders depending on how your opponent plays. So that immediately makes it formidable, because you have starters and extenders like Snake Eye. Second of all, obviously why the deck is crazy is, aside from being hyper consistent and only needing 1 card to play, it can play a ridiculous amount of non-engine. So the main Ryzeal core, and we won't have 7th Tachyon obviously by Anaheim, which is one of the roto cards that the OCG has, but the deck can play upwards of like 19 to 20 non-engine. Like you can play 15 to 17 hand traps, no problem, fit in some crossouts and call buys, and then you have immediately a topping deck, you know. And then third of all, I think it's I guess barrier or entry or difficulty to play the deck. Obviously there are like any deck or in Yu-Gi-Oh in general, there's going to be technical play that's required, but the barrier of entry for Ryzeal is quite low. So I think that a lot of newer players or players who maybe aren't as experienced will also pick up the deck. But that being said, I think that if the deck is played by an advanced player, they'll obviously perform exceptionally well. And I think it also has a great toolbox of utility in terms of its extra deck. You can make whatever sort of rank 4 you want. I think that it naturally has decent ways to push into boards going second through Myriological Aggregator, being able to chain block, and being able to resolve your effects to get a free negate going second. It has decent ways to handle Floodgates, because Aggregator is going to be able to negate sort of cards and just force out interaction and interruptions. And yeah, it has great access. You can have Exciton Knight going second to try and crack boards. You can have Baguska if you get, Molchamid, or if you get hand trapped a lot, or Droll and Lockbird. You can make a Baguska, you can make Dweller, you can make Dugaris to go ahead and just draw into those non-engine, draw into those hand traps. And it also has ways to play around pretty much any sort of non-engine card you can really think of. If you're wanting to play around Impermanent Veiler, you can make the rank 4 Galaxy Monster to basically provide targeting protection. If you're wanting to play around Nibiru, then you don't have to make that. You can go straight into Duodrive. If you're wanting to play around board breakers like Book of Eclipse or whatever it may be, Book of Moon, if you're wanting to play around Talent, Change of Heart, Mind Control, Detonator is a crazy card, not only because it's Trident 3 times per turn, but The fact that it also, for some reason, has a Dingir Super Protection effect. You have plug-in to be able to reborn your detonator after popping it, to be able to continue putting up interruptions after getting board broken a little bit. And that's even to mention about the Ryzeal field spell, which is just one of the most insane field spells I've seen in a while. I mean, being able to negate on resolution of a monster effect that doesn't start a chain in the same way that Baelings or Lara sort of triggers just on resolution is insane. The card advantage that you're able to get by drawing cards for free, it's just got so much. It's able to play around a lot of things. It's hyper consistent. It can play a lot of non-engine. It's got a great toolbox. It's very versatile, and it's not as difficult to play. And it doesn't inherently lose to any single card with the exception of Dimensional Barrier, but you must go second for that to really even have a huge impact. Obviously, there are like random floodgates like the band plays on, but I don't think I play that card. But with that being said, those are the reasons why I think Ryzeal is poised to be one of the best decks in the format.
Got it. So we're expecting, do you think this is more mid-range? You want to describe a category?
Yeah, it's definitely more of it's 100% a mid-range deck. It's a clear cookie cutter mid-range deck, but yeah, it's I think it's going to be very, very powerful.
I did also want to mention that even though we won't have 7th Tachyon for the deck, for its consistency, we do still have 3 Bonfire in the TCG, as well as 3 Pot of Desires, and they can play Small World. I've seen a couple of them play that. It seems to be a not super popular option, but an option nonetheless if they need that additional bit of consistency.
Yeah. Got it.
For sure.
We have the consistency we need with this deck. It looks really... I was playing it a little bit earlier today and it looks very... it looks... I don't know, it's kind of weird to say. It looks kind of simplified, you know?
100%.
It's really like...
It's extremely simplified.
Yeah, it's very cookie cutter.
It does what it does, but it does it super well.
Yeah.
I had a friend in the OCG and he's like a pro, he's got like a pro player. And I was talking to him the other day and he's like, bro, I just got waxed by a 6-year-old who just picked up Ryzeal today. It's just like, he's like, I couldn't do anything. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Oh my god.
He just opened good cardboard and then he just lost. So, I mean, the like I said, the barrier to entrance with this deck is quite low. So it'll be interesting to see if the same players will top.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I feel like to some extent it's a deck where anyone can really pick it up. Obviously, like I said, there is technical play. There are choices and decision trees you're going to have to make if you want to play around certain cards, which is, of course, that's Yu-Gi-Oh, right? But yeah, I feel like it's a deck which it doesn't require that much investment in time, like Ritual Beast, for example, to be able to play it competently.
All right. Last thing about Ryzeal I want to ask you, Jojo, is that what the end board look like? Like, what are you expecting? You have to quantify it on like 3 negates, 2 pops, stuff like that. How does the end board look like?
So usually the 1-card combo is going to end on a detonator with 3 materials. So that's 3 pops, which is okay. It's going to end on the field spell, which is a monster negate. And it will also either end on the trap card, which is another interruption, or it can also end on plug-in, the quick play spell, to help you push and play through board breakers. Basically, it reborns an XYZ in your grave and then attaches a material. So it just gives you ways, like, for example, if you get like Book of Eclipse or something, you can like chain your detonator, pop itself, plug in, bring back the detonator, equip another card.
Yeah.
If it's a 2-card combo, it may also end on another XYZ. So it could end on Dugaris to help you draw into more cards, draw into more non-engine. It can end on Baguska. There are certain matchups where like Baguska is crazy strong. It can end on Dweller as well. So usually it can end on double rank 4, or if it's one of the simpler combos, just a detonator, backed up with a lot of non-engine. So that's with a field spell. So all of those is pretty good, and the follow-up's amazing too.
Perfect. Alright, so this is the deck that is right now dominating the OCG. Now right next to it, there is another deck that has, I would say, quite a different playstyle, and it looks very interesting, at least if you're thinking about combo decks. And I want to go to you, Corey, on this one. We have Maliss. tell me, why is Malice being so successful in the OCG? And how do you think the playstyle of the deck goes? Like,
All right, so Malice first and foremost is a shifter combo deck. In the list you see on screen, they are playing Bestials because in their format, shifter isn't great. Because Ryzeal can play very effectively around shifter. And so they use the Bestials as more extenders rather than shifter insulating their combo like we do in Ritual Beast sometimes. They also are a Cybers deck, so they get access to all like the generic Cybers pile tools in the extra deck. They can do any number of things depending on how they build said extra deck. So they can do anything from like Heat Soul plus the Link 3 drawing like 4 cards, or they can go Terahertz to dump the Cyber Staveworm, which is a spell trap negate, dump in the Mirrorlogical Aggregator like we talked about in Ryzeal, which is a spot negation. They also play a Code of Soul in the main deck to send off of Terahertz, which essentially acts like an IP, but from the graveyard, so the IP doesn't have to be on board, so it's not susceptible to Ghost Ogre. So the normal Malice end board tends to be like if they go undisrupted and they open like a 1-2 card combo, it's usually like Firewall Terahertz and OG Firewall like next to each other. So that, and as well as the Reborn Trap for Malice. So Terahertz is the one that's going to dump all of their interactions from the extra deck and main deck depending on how they have their deck built. Firewall is going to act as like 1 to 2 bounces depending on when you force it out, as well as allowing them to extend more on their turn. Like you can play much heavier Cybers package and like go through your whole extra deck turn 1 with like Protect Code Talker and stuff like that to set up like 8 disruptions that are not like present on the field, so you're not weak to board breakers. But the Reborn Trap, the GWC, it'll be the second one there. That's the one that they usually end on, so that way on your turn they can go activate it, special back the Link 3 White Binder, which on summon is a triple DD Crow, so they can target either cards in your graveyard or their graveyard, and everything they banish from their graveyard is going to come back to the field by paying life points and generate them more advantage. So a lot of their cards are dual utility, where they can either further themselves or they can push you back. So it ends up becoming a very much so back and forth deck, while also being a combo deck that can just like turbo out ahead of you and overwhelm you with resources. The other traps, the one they will use on their turn when they're comboing is the TB11, which is an E-Telly. Banish it. All these traps have the same activation requirement, which is banishing a Malice monster you control to activate at the turn it's set. TB11 summons from deck, and if you like normal the White Rabbit, it sets the TB11, and then you TB11 banish the White Rabbit, summon one from deck. The White Rabbit summons itself back, and then you just continue on from there, and you just generate more bodies as like you tag stuff into the banish zone and back out again. The White Binder is probably the best of their Link 3s because it gives them all the follow-up on your turn, like I said, but also on its Reborn, it draws a card for some reason. I don't know why they put that text on the card. The other really good one that they'll probably make before they make the White Binder is the Red Ransom, which will let them search the field spell, which is their follow-up or extension depending on where and when you hand trap them. As well as when it gets banished, it banishes the Dotscaper from the deck, which is why you see that in the list, to give them another extender. So that's basically what Malice is trying to do in a nutshell. It usually ends on, and it can vary its end board depending on the matchup, which I think helps it a lot. But somewhere in the disruption, there's anywhere from like 2 bounces to 2 banishes to 4 draws to a spell trap negate to a spot negate to any number of things.
One thing I'll say is that when I've played versus this deck, I've found with my experience that hand trapping it is really weird. Like sometimes the deck can just die to one hand trap, and then sometimes it plays through 5. It's really weird. So I think it's appealing in that regard. Unlike Ryzeal, where it's usually not a good idea to Imperm Veiler their level 4 monsters, because any extender, any of the other like 15 1-card starters is going to punish you pretty much. So at that point, you might as well just call your Imperm Veilers, your Ogres for the duo drive. But with Ryzeal, with Maliss, I have found that this deck either just like dies to one, or it's like voiceless. Like sometimes
plays through everything.
They can just play through 4 or 5 hand traps.
That was one of the things I did have on my notes here that I was kind of like reading the more important pieces off of, is that when it comes to hand traps against Maliss, it's positioned really well because targeting negation kind of sucks against it, because because if they open any of the traps, all the traps are like soft bricks, so they can just go set trap card, normal summon effect, and if you imperm, they just chain it and banish it for cost.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right, so that's very interesting. One last thing about Maliss, how do you think this deck is in the grind game?
It has I don't want to say near infinite grind, but it can definitely go for a while, because the last link 3 that I didn't mention is the Hearts of Cryptor, which is one of its disruptions. And quick effect, you target one of your banished Maliss cards, shuffle it into the deck, and banish a card on the field, which lets you recycle all of your trap cards. And every time one of these guys is banished, they summon themselves back. And so it just ends up being a constant stream of like, okay, I'll recycle this card and then I'll get it back into rotation, and then I'll recycle another card and then I'll get that back into rotation through burying things. So I think Maliss is definitely the harder of the 2 decks, and will probably have the most player expression in how they build the deck and how they combo with it.
Now, go ahead.
Yeah, its grind game is amazing as well with the Bestials too. Like they're dual utility. They're hand traps, but they're also extenders in some ways. So it is quite scary.
Alright. Now we have some ideas about Maliss. We have some ideas about Ryzeal. Now, one thing I want to mention before we move on is that there is some differences, obviously, between the OCG and the TCG. So we're considering what we have seen the OCG and the experience that we have playing the decks. But I just want to mention this, just we are aware of them. So, number one, obviously, is no Maxine the TCG. I'm very grateful for that. They only have one color. Yeah. They have Red Reboot, which they're using in the side deck, I should mention. They have 2 Calvines. They only have 2 Shifters, only 2 Itelis. And as we mentioned before, some cards are not going to be released. I should mention one more card. They do have Zapalooza too. That's something important to mention. Ryzeal actually is playing this card quite often. You find it in the list. Apart from that, you have this card coming out later on, the 7 Tachyon. And this is the one, and this card is interesting because in the effect of this card, you are able to reveal something that is between 101 to 107, and you are able to reveal the Archfiend Seraph here, which is happen to be a light fairy monster. You know what other monster happen to be a light fairy? Archfiend Lancia. So we don't have to, we don't have to worry about this, at least for now. This is coming up later on. Another cards are coming later. Is the Template Skipper, which we haven't seen that many lists, but some of them are playing it, and this is specifically, you can see it's a Cybers, for Maliss. And another card that is coming out later is the Twins of Eclipse, and this is being played in the Ryzeal builds, some of them. I see here and there, depending on the build. And this is mainly, it's kind of it's a very interesting card actually. But it's something we don't have to worry for now, so we're gonna probably hold this for another conversation later on when we're closer to January. So the next thing I want to do, and I think this is gonna be very interesting, is because we're making a lot of predictions here. We normally go over results, we analyze the information we have in hand, we're making predictions here. We have this deck list, tier list here. And for this tier list, we have some decks that we already has in place. Here, more or less, this is gonna be what has seen around. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. What I wanna know, and what you guys to tell me, I'm gonna start, I guess we start with Ryzeal and we start with you, Jojo, that you're the one that cover the Ryzeal deck. Where do you see Ryzeal landing in here? After
I think it's at the top of tier 1, personally. You have to always keep in mind when it's the debut of new decks, you know, the day of basically the set coming out, a lot of people are going to want to try and get an edge. A lot of people are going to want to play with the newer decks. So, and I don't think we're going into a format which, yes, we can have some telegraphed information from the OCG, but at the end of the day, these are the first events, the first big events where these decks are legal. And so for those reasons, I feel like people respecting Maliss or Ryzeal, I don't know to what extent or how much they're going to respect those decks. So I think for those reasons alone. Plus, I think people will have trouble. Some people will have trouble getting the cards for the event the day before or whenever, however many days before the event. I think a lot of players will still play the decks that they have been playing, but I think a lot of people will try to pick up the newer cards for the day of the event. So for those reasons, and Ryzeal being strong, I think it's going to be top of tier 1.
Now, Corey, that's Ryzeal. Maliss, where do we play Maliss for now?
Maliss for now, I think, and this might be personal bias showing, I think it goes over Centurion. I can't say I've never understood why people like Centurion so much, but like Centurion seems extremely beatable, and in a format with Ryzeal, I think Centurion's gonna fall off a lot because every single time they go back to something out of the back, you're just like, pop it.
Oh yeah.
Pop that one. Pop that one. And it's the same deal with the Millennium Exodia deck. It's gonna run.
Yeah, I actually was thinking of playing that at Anaheim. I was actually thinking of playing Explodia at Anaheim just for fun. But yeah, the Detonator is a Yu-Gi-Oh card.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so I think Maliss goes above the Centurion, and it might even go over Yubel, because I described this to my teammate the other day, where I said Yubel essentially is like buying into GameStop at its peak, where like the more cards come out, the worse it gets.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. All right, so you mentioned something interesting, right? You say Centurion moves here. Now, I'm going to open the conversation for either of you. Any other decks moving around here before we talk about Riddlebeast? Anything else that's suffer or...
Fire King, and I think Fire King is slightly questionable. I think one of the trends we're going to notice about this new format is that we're going to see less Dominus Impulse, because Ryzeal is coming into the format and that card does literally nothing to it. That being said, it is pretty good against a lot of the other decks, but with Impulse projected to see less play, I think that the decks that are abusing it the most will, as a consequence, not be as strong.
Yeah.
I also think that Nibiru is going to make a return to people's main decks because Impulse is leaving those main decks. And Nibiru plus any hand trap versus a lot of these decks like Snake Eye or Fire King is going to put in work, even versus Maliss and Yubel as well, if you can time them correctly. So I think Fire King is going to go down slightly. I think Snake Eye... Essentially, what I think is that if your deck can play or have a game strategy for Perulia, Boros, and Shifter, I think those are the decks which are going to be outright the strongest decks of the format. So that's why, just from my early feelings, and I might be totally wrong, that's why I think Ryzeal, Maliss, Tempai will be the strongest decks, but I'm not sure if people will have enough time to really optimize the Maliss in time. So
yeah, that's why I kind of put Maliss just like right around Yubel. It's like either above it or below it, and there's no real way to tell, because it is a deck that is gonna need to see some refinement in order to be played at the top level. On that note, for decks that I think like move a little bit, I think based on the list I have in front of me here, I think Whitewood and Chimera both move down to tier 2 at best, because Droll is re-entering the format as well due to Ryzeal.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
And so, like, Maliss is able to, like, play through Droll, so is Yubel, so is Snake Eye, and Tenpai just doesn't care, it just kills you. But, like, Memento is, like, always really strong. Like, it can play, it has, like, game plans for everything except for Shifter, but, like, it's hard to have a game plan for Shifter. Either, like, you are Snake Eye or you aren't. And then...
I think Rescue should be in like tier doo-doo. Like that deck's cheeks.
This?
Which deck?
Rescue Ace.
Oh, I agree.
I think simply the reason is because more traditional hand traps are going to enter back in the format. Like we're seeing Vela, Imperm, Ash, Nib, Roll, and all these hand traps were traditionally really good versus Rescue Ace. The only reason it was any higher than what it was should have been is because it, in theory, plays around like the mole chummies, I guess. But I think people are going to play more traditional hand traps going forward. I actually think in terms of decks that might be able to compete with Ryzeal, I actually think Labyrinth is pretty good. So I think you've positioned it well because, and it's also decent in some ways versus Maliss. I mean, you have like, obviously it's not great into like Terahertz and Firewall being able to bounce, that's for sure. But I think that Lab versus Ryzeal is quite interesting in a matchup which I think warrants exploration because, you know, you have Daruma Cannon and you still have like a ton of good cards. You can always just set 5 and the Detonator can only respond to you popping stuff. It plays around the field spelled okay-ish. So I think Lab might see a little bit of experimenting with.
Yeah, Lab always seems like to me that it's a matter of what variant is the best into the format. Like, when you have Bestials in the format, you don't really want to be playing Furniture, and when your opponent's ending on like a bunch of Omni Negates, you kind of just want to go like set Torrential, set Strikes, say go.
Torrential, yeah. Got it. Alright, so we have more or less a list in here. Obviously, it's gonna change. Next month, we're gonna find out actually how the event and all. We're gonna find results. We're gonna move things around. No? Now, let's shift the conversation a little bit to the Ritual Beast deck. Because obviously there is new cards coming out, there is 2 new decks in the meta. I wanna know you guys, like, if you have to position Ritual Beast, first just to get kind of a metronome, kind of a temperature check, where would you put it in this list?
If I'm speaking biasly, top of 1, but
wow.
But that's just because I love Ritual Beast. In all honesty, I think it goes in tier 1.5. I think it goes right between Memento and Centurion.
Interesting. I'm gonna say it goes straight in Rogue, bro. Like that shit is going straight at top of Rogue. I mean, I like your enthusiasm a lot, and maybe I just haven't seen what you're talking about. But look, my problem. I mean, like people have probably some people might have seen my opinions on the deck over the past month or stuff like that. But you know, if you look at Ryzeal, if you look at Maliss, if you look at what cards beat those decks, for example, like the only clear lose condition with Ryzeal is like D barrier, right? Yeah. If you look at the lose conditions with Maliss, it's Lancia. If you look at the lose conditions for Rit Beast, it is literally both of those cards, and everyone will be playing both of those cards. Yeah. Okay. So for those reasons alone, I think that simply as a consequence of people's non-engine, I think that is going to tremendously affect the deck. And one thing I will say I might not have been as correct about was I actually have not been minding Dominus Impulse at all. Really? Being able to play through it, I've been able to actually play through that card quite a lot to my surprise this format because that means I've not been Nibiru'd nearly as much, which is amazing.
We love it.
But with people with like the expectation that Nib's going to come out back into the deck maybe, and Impulse is going to be maybe a side option, I feel like just that as well is going to be a huge problem for the deck. So I personally don't, and also not to mention that we're entering a format where one of Ritual Beast's biggest win conditions isn't viable, which is D-Shifter. So I think for all of those reasons, the deck is purely a rogue. I think it's going to take a pilot who, it's not even a matter of like who can pilot the deck well at that point. I think it's a matter of just get lucky and like just somehow dodge all of these non-engine
and half
cards
run.
which are going to just murder you.
Yeah.
Like you cannot outplay or outskill Lancia or D-Barrier unless you draw that out. Like there's, even if you're the best player in the world. So I think it has great matchups into everything else, but with everyone going aside Lancia and D-Barrier, it's just not like, it sucks. I'm really sad.
In my opinion, like I agree with you on Lancia. Like I'd be dumb to disagree with you on Lancia. The Lancia is going to be a problem for Ritual Beast. D-Barrier I've never felt like has been that insane of an issue. And I don't know if it's just because like I just open better than my opponent when they D-Barrier me or what. But like being able to like go like when they call fusion with D-Barrier and like being able to go into like SP to like try to answer the board and then go like Banshee, add flag, Protoss lock you, like you're getting back to your next turn, and then like if they don't have another D-Barrier, you're just gonna kill them. And so like that's why I felt like it goes into like tier 1.5 or tier 2 because I think it's better than every deck in tier 2. I think it's better than Centurion, but like Memento when it full combos is basically an FTK as well as like the decks above it, and like sometimes it struggles into like back row matchups and stuff. But into like Ryzeal specifically in my testing, there's been a lot of times where I'll just like start like normal summon Pengu effect, and if they don't negate it because they don't really know the matchup, they just go Detonator, pop it, you dump Lara, and then you banish both for Nochi.
Yeah. And
now all their targets have to go with the Nochi, which is just going to tag itself, get negated by the field spell, and then if you have any other extender, you just play through everything.
Yeah.
So like it feels like it's entirely doable. I think it's going to come down to like how the deck is built and like how many times you can dodge Lancia in a long tournament.
Yeah, it's just like at that point it feels like you're playing the grinded mini game before like that deck actually had lines to play through. It's just like you're entering a tournament where. Go ahead.
I've also always been an advocate where I'm like, I wish that on the last ban list they would have banned Shifter because I wanted to use that slot for like literally anything else when like Nib was in the format, because I'm like I can't not get nibbed if I Shifter myself. So like I never wanted to drop the Shifter.
Yeah, I'm the same. I usually have to shift to like midway through the line.
I'm like I want to avoid like my real lose conditions before I just drop Shifter and make it so your deck can't function.
Yeah. All right. Now you guys touched a little bit on something interesting. You mentioned a little about depending on the build, how we build the deck. So let's go ahead and jump on that and see how we think what ideas we think can help the deck for the coming format. So the first thing I want to do is that we're going to go ahead and establish the basics that we have for the deck, and we're going to go over what are the staples for the deck. And I think these are very set in place. So we have 3 Elders, 3 Spiritual Beast Melaras, 3 Kanahas, 3 Rampengus, and 1 of each when Lara, Winda, and Apelia. Apart from that, we have 3 Emergency Teleports, 3 Inheritance, and 1 Steeds. Now these cards I think will always be there. I think we always agree on that, no?
I would actually maybe not play 1 Inheritance personally.
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh, really?
I was gonna say 2 Inheritance is staple, and it depends on how much non-engine I want when like I add the 3rd Inheritance as well as Petalfin.
Oh,
well, you also need to keep in mind if people are gonna main deck Droll, Inheritance is terrible into that.
Yeah.
So I think that's another concern as well. And like you said, I think this format, because you can't cheese with D-Shifter, you will actually need to play as much non-engine as possible, because Shifter often, like when like I would jokingly when I would show my non-engine, I'd be like, I'm only playing 9 hand traps, but I play Shifters, so that's like 6, so I play like 15 hand traps. But now it's like you actually just need 15 hand traps, because Shifter can no longer just cheese Ryzeal or Maliss. So for those reasons, that's why I'd probably consider cutting the 3rd Inheritance to 2, as it plays also badly into Droll.
Got it. Now, if we're thinking about next format, we're thinking about these 2 Inheritance. Let's go over some cards that might make it for the rest. I believe we have, let me see, we have about 19 spots. And I notice this pen is dead.
You have 18 spots to make if you want to make it 40, because you have 16 monsters and you have 6 spell traps.
Yeah, it has 18 spots, no? Let's see what we put on those 18 spots. And I'm gonna talk on groups. I have 5 groups of cards here. And first, this is sort of like miscellaneous on what we're gonna put in the deck. And this is gonna be very interesting here. Because we have the Petelfin. We have the Nemesis package. Not in here, but as a maybe. And this will include this with the Corridor. We have Sechatos, Bones, that's a card we have talked about before. Sephra and this can be Kashtira package, it could be more extensive, but I want to know you guys' opinion. If you want to get started for us, Jojo. We had the
I would say another card, maybe another card we could put in that pile is Prosp.
Oh, well, that's coming up in the cards for consistency. So.
Oh, okay, my bad.
You're good. So these cards, what do you think? What color your eye, and why do you think should be probably in the deck?
Well, I absolutely think that we should still play Flag and Protoss at the least, because you know having the free FTK button versus Malice, it's just too good. In terms of what to call against Ryzeal, from my testing, I'm pretty sure it should be Fire, because they can't make Duo Drive. They can't make some of the Ryzeals are fire monsters, so you can still attribute FD. You can still call Protoss FTK Ryzeal or Malice, even if the Protoss calling fire versus Ryzeal doesn't fully kill them. Like, you're still gonna have other interruptions to deal with them. So, and I also think that they're important for certain lines. For example, if you get Peruliad, and if you have E-Tally, you can still access your Nemesis engine and only one draw. So I still think you have to play those. Personally, I've actually stopped altogether playing Corridor. I don't think I ever need that card ever. The reason being is that in a lot of the one-card combos with Canahawk, for example, when you get to the point where you have you make Nochi Drago and you have Winder on the board and you have Kiman Falco. So if I don't know what my opponent is playing, I'll usually just actually keep the Nochi Drago. I won't even touch the Nemesis cards, and I'll just make a pure broken Ritual Beast board of like Ulti Guy, Paleo, Nochi Drago with like 2 to 3 Rip Beast cards in the hand and Steeds with Ravitori banished. So I don't actually see a reason to play Corridor, as it's just unnecessary. Like, you just don't need it. Even if you don't know what your opponent is playing, you can still just make a more than acceptable pure Ritual Beast end board with Gaia Pelio, and that's going to be more than enough. And especially like we were talking about with prioritizing non-engine, I don't think we need to play Corridor, because by itself it doesn't exactly do anything. In terms of the other tamers, so Pilica I don't think is necessary as well. I remember playing it at the very first iterations of the deck, but that was just due to less experience. But I don't think you need it. Sure, it's cute in the grind game, but like, let's be real, games are pretty much decided by the end of turn 2 these days, so I wouldn't play it. I wouldn't play as Shadows either, at least in the main deck or even side deck. I just feel like it's an unnecessary card, which, you know, we can just, like I said, make a pure Ritual Beast board if we can't Protoss FTK. Fenrir is interesting, but because I guess it gives you a way to play through Lancia, but at that point, when it comes to dealing with Lancia, I just put them on Better Habit. Like, they're more likely not to draw it than to draw it, and I don't want to play like some random Fenrirs to try and, you know, win when those could be hand traps that I need for the games I go second. So I personally wouldn't play Fenrir. I've seen George really liking Bonds. Personally, I've never been a fan of this card. I think that the idea that it somehow helps with the Mole Chummies isn't that real, because you're still going to give them like 2 to 3 draws, right? So all I'm really wanting to prioritize in the rest of the deck is non-engine. Like, how many hand traps, how many non-engine can I fit to make this consistent, and like, can I cut the fat, basically, when a lot of pro players, not to say that I am one, I'm just saying when a lot of pro players are deck building, they're like, what is the least amount of engine required to have a competent deck? And how much non-engine can I then play after? So all of these cards I wouldn't play. So Petalfin is the only one which I'm 50-50 on. People know that I was a Pedalfin anti-enthusiast up until recently. The only reason why I would consider playing Pedalfin is like maybe in certain scenarios if you get debarriered and having that extra level 4 to even draw or something like that, like maybe being able to make a Banshee. But to be honest, like I don't think for this format I would play Pedalfin personally, just because there's less U-Bell, so there's going to be like it is nice having Pedalfin to hit U-Bell, which I agree. But I just don't really see it being absolutely necessary. I think a lot of the combos to play around certain mole chummies is still doable, or Impulse. We're going to see less Impulse, which is the whole reason why I put Pedalfin into my deck, was to play after getting Impulsed in certain hands. But I think if we're going to see less of that card, then I don't know if I need to play Pedalfin personally.
Corey, do we still have Protoss in the deck? And Flag?
So yes. There's hypothetically two versions of the deck. There's one where you end on a pure Ritual Beast board, and you're maining, I think it's like 16 to 18 hand traps, somewhere in there. You're maining Dominus Purge, and like you're just focusing on drawing as many hand traps as possible to like make your opponent pass on nothing, and then just like normal Cannonhawk and beat them. But I put Flag and Protoss back in the deck because I kind of missed it going first because I never felt safe. One of the cards that we can play in like the X deck is like Baguska, but I'm sure we'll like get there.
Yeah.
But whenever like I was getting to a point where I'm like, okay, I could make Baguska, but like I'd feel so much safer if I made Banshee, got Impermed, and just continued from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I agree that Flag and Protoss are in the deck. I'm a Dolphin enjoyer. He's always in my deck list. Yeah. I think since like I played the deck at Nats this past year, because like I especially like Pedalfin when I play like 3 Inheritance to have like the most chance to see a name along with Inheritance, because that's one of the problems I run into is where like I'll draw Inheritance and nothing to reveal.
Yeah, it's so tilting.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm so close to just having game, I just don't. Yeah. But I can see arguments for and for not playing Pedalfin. I think it'll honestly depend on how the format shakes out, because while we have, like we've said before, like even though we have the 2 decks coming in, like even when they came out in OCG, before OCG cratered the current format that we have, they were like on par, if not just a touch below outside of Ryzeal, but that's just because Ryzeal had a better Max C matchup than every deck in the format.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that's my opinion on those cards.
So we're considering this. We think these ones maybe, but these ones for sure. For now, no. These ones are
correct. I will say on the Kashira package, it's gonna sound so haterish, but I've never respected the Cash package, even when it was a deck in like 2023. I played Vanquish Soul and just searched Book of Moon and made him pass. So like I don't agree with the argument of like Fenrir being a way to have like a plan for Lancia. Like Jojo said, I'd rather put them on drawing it than not drawing it, because we don't have 7th Tachyon yet, so they can't search it. They have to hard open it or draw into it in combo if you don't stop them. And even if you stop them, there is something that we can play in the X deck to beat getting Lancia'd.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. All right, so we have this one.
Maybe just put the Pedalfin in for now.
Yeah. Put it in over like the Inheritance spot that you have flipped over.
Guy, you're just gonna make fun of us for doing this. All right, consistency cards. You guys mentioned Draw was gonna be in the format. Would you still suggested Prosperity, Jojo? Why Prosperity? And tell me if you wanna talk about any of the other cards considered. If not, we can just put it by the wayside.
Yeah, I love Prosperity personally, but like you said, we're going into format where there's going to be Droll and Lancia, so man, that sucks. I think I would still play Prosperity because it's just the deck lacks consistency sometimes, and you really want to draw some of those stronger hands. And at the end of the day, Prosp also can search for Ash Blossom, which is really important for the Mole Chummies. So again, it's the same thing. It's like better have Droll. I don't know, to be honest, on this one, if I'm gonna play this one, and Petalfin were the biggest ones, which I'm not too sure if I want to play. I'll probably still play Prosperity, but I don't know. That one's a big maybe one for me. I actually, in my current list, have been playing a copy of Shieldbearer for that extra consistency, which I've been really enjoying. I actually am a big fan of one Shieldbearer at least, but I can't wait to go Shieldbearer and then get Drolled and then just want to neck myself. So
that's gonna be sad.
I don't know about this. It's hard to say. It's difficult to say for sure. Those two cards, I'm not too sure if I'll play them in the deck.
Correct. Corey, you have played TTTs in the past. Let me know if still this in the main deck still, or what about this?
I'm very much on board with Triple Tactics Talents because one of the things I've noticed is in game 1, your opponent rarely blind charmies.
Oh, really?
They'd rather you commit to the board to see what you're doing and then charm you, so that way or like charm you in a spot where they're guaranteed to get a draw, so it's like where you would chain Maxi to a special summon effect to guarantee the 1-for-1 trade. In which case, then you can just talents check their hand, and then you know what you're doing the rest of the time. Also, one thing I wanted to say about Prosperity and Shieldbearer, I've always been like a Shieldbearer hater in the same way I've been a Petalfin enjoyer. So that's my opinion on him. And then for Prosperity, which is the more important one, going into next format, I think playing Prosperity depends entirely upon how you build the deck in the non-engine. If you are playing more of a board breaker approach, Prosperity is much better than if you're playing hand traps. You'd rather the Prosperity just be another hand trap.
Interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like, in terms of talent, I've never been a fan of that card personally, because I obviously like the theory that you're saying can happen, but a lot of people are just going to shotgun the chummies, especially Perulia in the draw. You know what I mean? So like, I don't really know in practice, for me at least, from my experience, that's actually been the case. I think talent is like okay to play if you're gonna adopt a more of a board breaker strat, which we can talk about. But I think the immediate thing which takes priority is, can I play 15 hand traps in my deck? Okay, if I can, then I can start looking into cool cards like Tactics.
Oh, interesting. All right, so let's have that
conversation. I will say I do like how like kind of like opposed me and Jojo are. Like, you're getting like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, it's really useful.
Very entertaining.
It's really useful. Now, talking about being opposed to each other, we have hand traps. We have board breakers. Okay. Now, let's go individually, and I'm just gonna find them out, and you guys let me know like why you think is part of the main deck for each. Now, I only have one football, so proxying the other two, but everything that we have. This I only have 2 push, but I just wanted to put it here to include it.
And 5 Perulia.
yeah, pretty much. All right, so December. 6 hits, you go to a tournament, you are thinking what to play next month. All these cards could be hand traps you have on your main deck. What will make it in? And we can start, either of you guys can start. One.
Well, I think the first part, sorry to cut you off. No, I think the first part,
you go.
Okay, I think the first part is, let's assume that the Petalfin is in the deck. Let's assume we're not playing Shieldbearer. And let's assume. Okay, so Corey wants the Petalfin. I want the pot. So we'll make those concessions. So let's put the pot in. We'll take the Shieldbearer out. So how many cards is this? This is like 18 or 20?
So it was 18
19?
spots, now it's 22. So we,
Okay, it's 22.
No, sorry, now we have 14 spots left.
Okay, so in terms of hand traps, I think obviously Ash Blossom is going to be the first one that goes in immediately for mole chummies. So I would put in Ash Blossom. I don't think that's too controversial.
Okay. Whole playset of Ash Blossom, no?
What was that?
Playset, no? Ash Blossom Seal.
Yeah, 100%.
Got it. All right.
I think that we should put Imperm for sure.
Oh, Impermanence.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Imperm.
Interesting.
I think that it's just got a lot of utility going first or going second. It can, you know, like I said, versus Maliss, if you hit a Dormouse, there's a chance they can just pass. It's also going to be pretty good into Duo Drive. Sometimes what's been really awful to play against Ryzeal is when they hard open the field spell. So like, you hold your Veilers, you hold your Mourners for the Duo Drive, and before they summon it, they activate Cross, or that's the name of the field spell. And then you're just sitting there like, oh my gosh. So I think Imperm being able to play around that is helpful.
Interesting.
Obviously, you still have to deal with the Monster Negate for sure. So I still think Imperm is pretty good.
One other thing I just wanted to mention, because you were mentioning Imperm compared to like the field spell if they hard open it, they could also just make the rank 4 Star Leech that says that their guys over 2k can't be targeted.
Yeah, that's also true. It's like a real 50-50, because if they do that, then they play into Nibiru. So then it becomes a question. It's like, are Ryzeal players going to... That's the biggest issue when going into this YCS. It's like, are the good Ryzeal players going to play around Veiler Imperm, which they technically should, at which point they get punished by Nib.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're playing this like chicken game, which is like, I hate it when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! You're just playing like 50-50. It's like, if they play around this, they play into that. Yeah. But it makes more sense.
Do I win or lose the coin toss?
Yeah, like I would also in this hand trap like list here put Nibiru, because there's a good chance like that card is main deckable in Rip Beast, because it's good versus Maliss, obviously, because we don't have Appaloosa, so it's challenging sometimes for them to play around Nib, but it can be really good versus Ryzeal. And I think some of the more experienced Ryzeal players may choose to play around Imperm and Veiler and Mourner, because there's simply more effect negation hand traps, right? So it makes sense to play around those, but in doing so, they may play into Nib. So
interesting.
That's one thing I've been considering. I still think Imperm is good enough to play, but if we're wanting to think about like possibly metagaming and stuff like that, maybe you can put in Nibiru in the main deck. It's especially in the games you get stopped going first, right? If you get stopped going first, if you get Lanciered, if you get Drolled or Peruliad or something like that, and you have to just pass with like a Nib plus any hand trap, well, it can actually help you end their turn and then have a crack back for turn 3. That's why I like Nib, because Nib going first is often difficult to play around paired with another interruption. So I know that people say that Nib might not be a good choice for Ryzeal, but I think there's a world I'll main deck Nib, to be honest, personally.
All right, Corey. We have some hand traps in here that we haven't touched yet, and I'm getting worried that the shifter might be out of the deck.
Your worries would be correct.
Look at that.
I think shifter moves to the side deck. If you told me I had to register my deck list for YCS Anaheim right now, shifter is in my side deck 100%.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's just because it makes it like it doesn't do anything to Maliss or Ryzeal. It still does what it does into the current format. But as Jojo touched on earlier, when new decks come out, a lot of like top players tend to be like, I want to play the new decks because 1, people are going to be more unfamiliar with the matchup, and 2, they've been playing the same Snake Eye deck for a year now. They're bored of it.
Yeah.
Like they want to play something else, and so a lot of them will probably queue Maliss or Ryzeal, in which case you don't want to be opening shifter in either of those matchups.
Got it.
I think Fool Us is fine to be mained, because it pairs so well into both matchups, and like you can just discard it to trade 1 for 1, even if you're not getting like tremendous value off of it.
Yeah.
Perulia is like a 50-50 on if it is going to be mained or sided. I think it once again depends on how you build the deck list.
Yeah.
Droll is similar, where conceptually I like it mained because we have so many combos through Droll and Lockbird. That in a world where we like main Ash and Droll and we get like Charmied, we could hypothetically Droll ourselves and then end on the IP Rayatari Steeds board.
That's true.
And then Dominus Purge, I think, because can't be mained because we're playing the Nemesis cards, so it would be sided if played at all.
Yeah, I think I personally have loved Dominus Purge. I've played it a lot in my side deck, and
I agree.
It's been really solid, but I think now with Shifter having to be moved to the sideboard, I don't think there's actually space now to play Purge. So I don't think I would play it at all. And it doesn't seem that good into Malice, or it doesn't seem that impactful because, you know, they go like normal summon or whatever, banish, and then
Yeah, the best thing about Dominus Purge is the fact that, unlike Imperm, it bypasses every hiccup we have when we were talking about my opponent resolving Duo Drive, which was if they have the field spell, they can negate any monster hand trap in response, and if they have the Star Liege, it can't be targeted. Dominus Purge is not a monster and also does not target, so it fulfills both halves.
That's true.
It also hits Thrust, which is going to be a popular side.
Oh yeah, it's kind of funny.
So like, I think that Purge has some. I think it's worth maybe considering to play, but
I think hypothetically, if there's a pure Ritual Beast end board that you can get to and be happy with, then Dominus Purge can 100% be in your main deck.
Interesting.
It'll make it difficult though to play some of the lines, like for example, like anti-Nibiru lines where
when you go like Banshee summon.
So I'm not sure.
Interesting. All right. So as far as hand traps, we prefer these ones. These ones might make it, and these ones should go that far. You know, should already have this. Maybe these ones also make it in. All right. So
I'm personally also a fan of Droll, though. To be honest, like I think Droll is like it sort of is going to in some way take the role of Shifter in that it's going to try to stop your opponent playing. I think it is probably the strongest hand trap into Ryzeal because it by itself will make them most of the time just go Baguska Pass, which is quite
or
good.
Detonator Pass, one of the two.
Or Detonator Pass, right? So, and then it's also going to have crossover utility into Fire King, Snake Eye. If they go Bonfire, it's going to have utility into Snake Eye. It's going to have utility into U-Bell. So there's a world that you can main deck Droll for sure. But I'm not too sure.
The only downfall of Droll is honestly that Malice can just full combo without really needing.
Yeah,
it's really weird. Like I said, some hand traps, like sometimes they'll go Allure and you'll draw them, and that can be pretty good and stop the draw too. But I agree, like Droll's pretty hit or miss. Another card that we maybe should have considered is Ghost Ogre. But yeah, maybe it's possible. Like it can hit Duo Drive, right, which is pretty solid. I'm not really too sure of its utility into Malice, but
I've always enjoyed having like one Ghost Ogre in my deck list somewhere for the utility of like an unused E-Telly.
Does that actually come up?
It's come up a couple of times where like my Yubel opponent will like activate the Nightmare Pattern. I'm like, hold on, E-Telly Ghost Ogre, continue.
Oh man, next time you should be playing the psychic. What's the name of the guy that is 11? The synchro.
Like Hand Punisher.
Jack Hand Punisher. All right.
Sickening.
We covered this. Let's go really quick over board breakers because I feel we're leaning the way of hand traps. At least that's kind of the vibes, I guess. Book of Eclipse. These are very traditional stuff that we have put in the main deck before. I remember Julio playing this when he top. Do we put this in? Anything to consider here or side?
A lot of these board breakers are only really good versus Ryzeal, which is the biggest problem with them. Like Book of Eclipse is only going to hit Ryzeal. Evenly is pretty much only going to hit Ryzeal because they have the Cyber Struous Worm with Terahertz.
Yeah,
Dark Ruler Like, sure, you can Dark Ruler them, but they're gonna have plug-in to be able to summon back. Actually, that's wrong. They can't respond to it with monster effects, but you still have to deal with like the monster negate. With Maliss, like they're still gonna have the trap cards. They're still gonna have massive card advantage from the draws. They're still gonna have hand traps. They're still gonna have ways the Bystials to play anyway. I'm not a fan of Dark Ruler at all, personally. I think Book of Eclipse is worth talking about because it is good going first or second, and obviously it's got great utility in Ritual Beast. Evenly is only really good against Ryzeal, unless you compare it with something else for Maliss, but I don't even know what you compare it with. Maybe a Sales Ban or something like that.
Got it. Corey, Book of Eclipse, the only one that we're considering for now?
I really like Book of Eclipse, but Book of Eclipse needs the context that right now I'm playing it, but I'm also playing 3 talents along with it. So like into like the Ubel board, when they have like Desiree and stuff up, you will just Book of Eclipse, so have to Desiree it, otherwise they lose everything, and then you can just like talents take their dude and just start like clearing the board. Because you can like talents take the Wave King, beat over something, and then, or no, you can't because of Nightmare Pain, unless like you Ghost Target or something happened to it. But then you can like turn the Wave King and like an E-Telly Lara into like SP and then SP effect, and then like they chain the Phantom. Like you slowly eat through all of the disruptions that your opponent can possibly have when you have those 2 cards in combination.
One thing about Eclipse, I'll also add is that I think it is in practice, you know, people always say don't mix board breakers with hand traps. Like either play 15 hand traps or like maybe play just like 9 to 12 board breakers, right? Don't ever mix them. But in practice, when you draw Book of Eclipse paired with like one of those lingering floodgate hand traps like Droll or Perulia versus Ryzeal, for example, a lot of the half boards that deck has to make, a lot of times like Baguska pass. So having the book to be able to deal with Baguska, I think is also really important. As it just sort of simplifies whatever you're... It was the same thing with like in Snake Eye when you shifted them and they end on IP with Oaken the Spell and Trap. Like the book is then going to deal with whatever half board a lot of the time these decks have made after you like hit them with a lingering hand trap. So I like Book of Eclipse, but I need more serious testing to know if I'm going to main deck it.
All right. So
as for Evenly and Dark Ruler has the problem that it's always had, which is every deck that Konami has designed in like the last year has access to a chainable back row. So that way they can continue afterwards. And right now, the Fire King Snake Eye deck is using their Flamberge to put something in your spell trap zone so they can't get Lightning Stormed or Evenly.
Yeah, that is an issue with that card. All right. Last section, last couple of cards for the main deck here. Calby, and we're playing so many hand traps. Why about Crossout? How do you guys feel about this?
I'm a fan of Call by 100%. It can hit Perulia, it can hit Furos, it can hit Ash, it can hit Droll. So I'm 100% probably either siding it or maining it. It just depends of how necessary I want to play my non-engine and hand traps.
It's on the deck list somewhere.
Yeah. Crossout, I've had a love-hate relationship with. So originally when Furos and the Moltramis really came out, I'm like, I need to draw answers to these cards. But when I was testing more, it's like the problem inherently with Crossout is you got to play a bunch of Crossout targets. Like I don't want to go first and play one Furos or one Perulia. I don't want to go first and have like suboptimal hand traps. It messes up the side patterns. It messes up your main deck, and it's like, let's say you go first, right, with Crossouts in your deck. Like, what are you realistically cutting? Like, you're not going to cut Ash Blossom. You're not going to probably cut Book of Eclipse because those beat Imp and Bela. You're not going to cut, like, at the time, Dimension Shifter because that's an auto win, right? So then, like, what? You're going to add 3 Crossouts and then, like, a Furos and a Perulia and, like, 1 Nib, maybe an Impulse at the time. It's like, I'm pretty sure that still keeps up. And it's even with, like, I'd rather at that point put them on better draw Lancia, right? Like, that's the only card I'd meaningfully want to cross out. So if Lancia is as popular as it is, maybe, but then it's like you're also going to have to put in a Nib, right? You're going to have to put in like all these other cards. So I don't know. I've always tried to when it comes to answering like Furos or Perulia, try to find cards to push through them, or even let them have 1 to 2 draws. But if they're going to be under shifter like Di-Fi or a D-shifter like Fire King and Snake Eye could never play through that. But this is now not the same theory that we can use for Maliss or Ryzeal, right? Because
yeah, exactly.
they're not going to care about those cards at all. So maybe it's come to the point where we do have to side deck cross out Designator. Like maybe that's just where we are at. Because clearly the strat of trying to hit them with Di-Fi or Shifter to play through for next turn is just not going to be a viable strategy. So maybe we will have to put in some cross out somewhere in our side deck. So
okay, you bring some interesting stuff. Let's touch really quick on the extra deck before we move to the actually side deck, which I think is gonna be the most interesting part, because I know we have some spicy stuff that we have been thinking about. We might revisit these cards. What I'm gonna do
while you're cleaning up, I just want to mention something about crossout. When it comes to like crossout designator, you can, like Jojo said, you can like play through most of the stuff that they're going to be doing to you. And so the only thing you can't do is play through Lancia. But at that point, if instead of playing the crossout, I'd rather just play Thrust to guarantee that I get my turn back.
But the problem with Thrust is like versus Ryzeal, versus Maliss, for example, right? Like, what are you realistically setting?
Set Sanctum, Summon Lancia.
We're gonna get there, because I think there is something interesting with Thruster. Man, I can't wait to talk about the side deck, but let's touch about this really quick before we get there. Staples for the extra deck: 2 Kanahas, 2 Noshis, 1 Apelio, 1 Gaia, Kimufalco, Ray Rautari, and the SP. And also we mentioned we're playing we mentioned we're playing Protoss, so we have Flambir, we have the Banshee here. That's 10 cards, and this, I think we can agree, are gonna always be there, no? So 5 cards and the spots that we might have for them. We're gonna go a little of a speed run here. We're gonna put cards in if we're gonna include them, potential, or we won't consider. The first thing is, do we need a second Psychic monster next month for the format? And if so, what that monster would be?
It's definitely a second Raritari, in my opinion. Like, I'm definitely a big fan of second Link 4. It comes up a lot in game states where you have to crash Winda, for example, to just cheat out a Raritari. Especially in the games you get buried and you need the second one for the grind game. So I'm definitely playing a second Raritari, 100%.
I think it also matters into like your back row matchups like Labyrinth if they're on Solemns, because they will just solemn the summon of Raritari and then you can never get it back.
Yeah. Or if you play Fein Castira, Unicorn. Yeah.
100%.
So you will include it too, Corey?
Oh yeah, I'd play the second Raritari before I played any other name.
Got it. All right. Now we have some other options here that are Link monsters that have been played in the past. And we're talking about Nibiru earlier. So we have Anima, we have Link Spider, Crouch Ship, and some Link tools here. Crouch Ship, Reprodocus, which just stopped actually in Mexico, regional, IP Mascarena, the Rabbit, Pin Knight, and the other card that is I'm missing here is the PS Raider and the Pin Knight here. Of these monsters, anything you would consider has potential, anything you guys will include? What do you guys think?
I've always been a fan of Anima. That card is like staple in my extra deck.
Really?
The amount of times that people just don't play around it, or just having something to E-Telly into an Spiritual Beast Tamerlara and then turn into something else, especially in order to like make an SP to pressure a board state, is so relevant.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I think actually I have Anima in my extra deck right now, and it's also nice having the Dark attribute for Protoss. Sometimes you'll be stuck on only having Wind and Light, so I can see the utility of playing Anima, and I'd probably play it still. I'm giving all the praise to Cross Sheep. That card is goated. That card is like originally I thought, okay, cross sheep's not that needed, right? Because in a lot of the times you can make it, you can just make SP, banish or banshee and summon it. But the reason why cross sheep is mandatory, in my opinion, is because we're expecting to see like Perulia everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And if you open emergency teleport plus any other ritual beast card, you need cross sheep, because it comes to a point in the combo when you make like cross sheep, you make flame banshee, you summon flag. Sorry, you go like you flame banshee, then you make cross sheep, you contact fuse into Nochi Drago, and the cross sheep can bring back the flag from the graveyard.
Yep.
And the flag searches the Protoss. So I think if people are expected to play Perulia, I'm 100% playing cross sheep. It also makes it so that, like I said, having the earth attribute for Protoss and being able to randomly FTK the random plant player in the room is hilarious. So I'm definitely a fan 100% of playing cross sheep to have all the utility for all the attributes as well. Being able to play around Perulia with E-Telly and being able to Protoss call fire in a lot of the anti-Nibiru lines, whether you have like Lara, Cannahawk, for example, you need to have cross sheep to be able to call the correct attribute.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I'm 100% playing cross sheep.
All right, Corey, anything else in here you want to consider maybe for the deck? Or you think the cross sheep is not good?
No, cross sheep's definitely an include. I was much like Jojo, where like at first I'm like, I don't understand like why we play this card. Like we can just do other stuff without it. And then like I started playing with it, I'm like, never mind, he's him.
Yeah, you actually need cross sheep a lot for the E-Telly.
I've been experimenting a lot with the Droll and Lockbird lines with Droll coming back into the format, so I think IP is very necessary.
Oh, interesting.
I agree.
Really?
Wow. I think it goes into include purely for the fact that like against Ryzeal, even if you get Drolled, if you can set up the IP, they can go like Ice, summon X effect to add. You just like IP into SP banish, and then when they activate the effect in hand, you SP tag out the other dude. You can starve them of so many bodies, force them into like a duo drive line in order to get to the rest of the combo, and then like one hand trap makes them pass.
Yeah, an Ash there. Yeah, got it.
I'm a big fan of IP as well. I'm never cutting that card.
All right, the cards in here, I think for the most part not considered. There is one that I want to touch base with you guys on, because I know Nibiru is coming back in the format. So what about the Link Spider here?
Cross sheep does most of, if not the same thing.
Yeah, a lot of the time you can just make a cross sheep instead, I've found. There are instances though where if they nib you at very specific choke points, like when they early nib you, that's probably when you need a Link Spider. But like, I've never been early nibbed pretty much ever.
Yeah, like the solo Cannahawk line without the Link Spider, you still just like add Protoss before your 5th summon, so then you just go through the whole Ritual Beast combo and you can get to Gaia-Pelio before you commit the Protoss to the board. And the Protoss is like what they're trying to hold the nib for.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you summon Gaia-Pelio and it no longer matters.
Yeah, like only Ritual Beast players will know when to act. You know, like everyone will usually just like wait till the end, or they'll just like wait for some half board. But I think it's worth to take the gamble to not play Link Spider personally.
Got it. All right. 4 more cards, and this one we're thinking more about the big monsters that we have in our flex boss here. Unicorn, Access Code, normally they go together in a package there. Cialantis, that I know you have played before. And I'm putting the Goddess here too, because, you know, just to consider, of these 4, any of these to include, any of these have potential we want to test out?
Simply the fact that we only have 1 extra deck space left, for me, it seems obvious to just put Xylantis. I've never played Unicorn and Access Code Talker. I've never needed those cards ever. Xylantis is just the cleanest, most efficient way for a turn 3 OTK that you can play that requires only 1 slot in your extra deck. And it is also nice having a water attribute to call with Protoss, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, to me, it's just obvious to play Xylantis. I've never needed Unicorn or Access Code ever.
What do you think, Corey?
I agree. I've never used Unicorn or Access Code. I think I used Goddess for 1 event because I just didn't know what to put in the slot. I've played Xylantis before, and in my extra deck that I'm testing currently for Crossover Breakers format, I don't play any of the 4.
Oh, really?
I understand the theory behind Zealantis, but like if I
maybe
ever got to a point where the Zealantis came up, I usually already won that game.
Yeah, I agree. It's cuttable for sure. It is. It is. You probably want to play like Baguska maybe in that slot. I'd imagine, which is fair.
Yeah.
I think it's actually coming up here. Which card I want to talk about?
All right. All right, so we touched on this, and I'm gonna put this in potential because I recorded another video this morning in Spanish with Julio and other guys. We kind of like that. We kind of like the access code, so I'm gonna just put in potential. All right, this is high in potential, though, because you guys are pretty much including the deck. Now, XYZs, Baguska, Exito Knight, Dweller. We have Lightning Chidori, Tornado Dragons, and the two big ones, Zeus and Typhon. Go ahead, Corey. Tell me what you want in here, and I think it's gonna be this one, no?
So in the two different lists I'm testing at the moment, Baguska only makes the list when I'm not maining the Nemesis cards.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because that is what you put on the end board of like pure Ritual Beast, is like you end up like Rayatari, IP, Steeds, and then you just make Guska in the corner.
Yeah.
But the current slot that I'm playing of the list I'm favoring right now isn't Baguska, it's Typhon.
Really?
Typhon to me, it's probably why I'm testing so well into Ryzeal at the moment, because you already force a whole bunch of awkward interactions from them. And so like if you ever open kind of like, I want to say like if you ever open middling or like you get stopped, you usually just have like a reminating body around, and you can just go like make Typhon, beat over the 1XYZ, bounce the detonator back to their extra deck, and then any hand trap stops the follow-up. So it's all about playing through what they have and then having that last bit of interaction.
Yeah, I agree.
Because after you summon the Typhon, they can't use the detonator effect because it's 3k or over.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a fan too of Typhon. I definitely would consider playing it as well.
Wow, okay. Interesting. So, anything in here that you guys want to touch? I know we talked about
nothing else there.
Really?
If you ever get to a game state where any of those cards come up, you probably won, other than Guska.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Guska, it's just like they're gonna have like 7 cards in the hand by the time they draw. It's like they're probably gonna draw an out. Like
that's one thing.
It's a potential card, but once again, it comes down to how you have the deck built, what matchups you're expecting. Because if I'm not expecting Ryzeal to be the best deck, Typhon probably doesn't make it, and it might be Zealantis. But if I'm expecting Ryzeal to be like the most represented deck, it's probably just Typhon.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Gosh, this is really useful, like really good, really cool stuff we're talking about here, and I feel with this in mind, you can start preparing for the next format, start thinking how you want to build your deck. I think this is very, very useful, actually. All right, cool. Now to the part I have been waiting for, and this is the side deck, and I feel we have some spicy stuff here coming up. But first, let's touch some very generic stuff about the side deck. So I'll put all this stuff to the side.
Real quick, I think the funniest thing I've ever done with Typhon in like a tournament setting was the Rosemont Regional I won. I think like round 7 I played against a Ubel guy, and I just had Typhon in defense on my board for like 4 turns because I cosmicked his Nightmare Pain, so he couldn't do any damage to me and he couldn't clear it.
That's great.
Just sat there.
Oh my god. Alright, I'm gonna leave this in here just so we have a point of reference of how the deck look like when we are side decking, okay? Okay. This goes here. Alright, side deck. We have a couple of different categories. I want to touch on the quick one first. And these are cards that are special cards. Has a very interesting purpose in this side deck. We're playing Gagaga Cowboy. Or Spooky.
No! Stop playing time cards. Why do people do this?
I'm not playing any time cards. If time cards come up, I fucked up somewhere and the game should have ended like 4 turns ago.
Yeah, like people who play time cards, you guys suck. Don't play time cards.
Okay.
Like I played it at OS, to be fair, but it never came up once. And like my friend Poe, he just said, just put it in there and like try to summon it, and if you do, just scream out "Yeehaw" when it never happens. So
Get him.
I'm not playing any time cards. We don't need that.
Alright. Well, no, very popular. I see. Okay. Now we have about 4 different categories here, and I think this is gonna be interesting to see where we go with this. I'm gonna touch fearing hand traps because we already kind of touched on these ones. Okay.
Yeah,
Lancia.
we're playing 3 of that side. Well, 100% playing 3 of that.
Oh, 100%. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that card.
Shifter?
Yeah, that
Side
one's
3,
going
yep.
into.
Ooh, okay. Retaliating, see, because I know people have been
No, we don't need that.
No, we don't need that. Okay.
I think Josh mentioned it in his most recent Centurion video about retaliating C, where like sometimes their hands like they just do everything before they ever give you a chance to retaliating C them, so then it just does nothing.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a lot of the decks that are like, you have to keep in mind the decks that are playing Red Sea in their side deck. If they could, they would just be playing D Shifter, right? So it's like,
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it's
you're
just
totally
format
right.
dimension for decks that can't play Dimension Shifter.
I do find it very funny that we have 3 cards to prevent banishing and 3 cards to banish everything.
Yeah, it covers everything.
Covers everything, no? All right. We have Bestials here. How do you feel about those?
I'm not high on Bestials in Ritual Beast.
Yeah, me neither. I'm not a fan of those cards either.
I liked them. I liked them before Rage of the Abyss when Ubel was more popular. Because I liked having like 3 more shifters where like I can hit like a key card out of their graveyard. And Druisworm also like just helped clear problematic bodies. But when you have Shifter and like Shifter's not even great in the format, why are we playing like a worse Shifter? They would tell you see.
I'm personally, yeah, I agree with everything. I think it's like, I'm not playing Bestials. If I'm playing Effect Veiler, it's going to be in my main deck or not in my deck at all, personally. I think Ghost Ogre is cool and cute and it has utility. So like, again, that'd be a card I would only main deck if I were to play it.
Oh, interesting.
Really, a lot of the cards we were talking about in the main deck, the ones that we were 50-50 on, if they're not there, they're going to be here. So I'm talking about the Drolls, I'm talking about the Molchummies, I'm talking about the Nibs.
Yep.
Like those cards are all only things we'll be able to figure out after more testing. Like all of these cards here, like with the exception of Phantasme, I would put in my deck.
Yeah, they all have arguments to be somewhere on the deck.
Yeah, for sure. And Callby is either going to be in the main deck or side deck somewhere.
Yeah, either or.
And like, while we're at it, maybe cross out Designator. You can.
Oh, really? In the side deck?
Maybe. Like it's like I'm really more leaning to not playing it and finding something else. But it's just worthy. It's to put there in case. But I probably would rather play a Thrust package at that point.
I think the easiest way for me to describe Crossout would be that it's like the 24th side deck card. Like there's like 8 cards ahead of it, but like it could come up the list.
Yeah, I think it's like because there is no answer to Lancia. Whereas like all the other hand traps like Furos, Perulia, if you have like a lingering banish floodgate, like it's okay. But if you're playing Malice, like you don't mind putting in 1 Lancia, like that's not a brick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
3 cost up, like that's okay. So that's all right. So.
All right, now Jojo, this is for you here. The Trolls package. You were the one that kind of put me into playing these cards in my side deck. And I know you have played it in the past and you make deck profiles with them, and I know they have been quite popular in your decks before. So we have the barriers, and there is one card I'm proxying here because I just realized this morning I need it. There is a card, and I'm gonna actually show it on the screen. There is a card called Simul Archfield that can be one of the Trolls targets. And this card reads, if an opponent array control one of the types, and the important thing in here that you wanna see is that include links, they cannot control 2 or more of the same types. Alright? So that's the main thing we're going to consider with this Simul Archfield.
I guess is this your set target for Malice, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. That it covers Malice and sort of, not really, Ryzeal a little bit. How do we feel about the Trolls package and about these cards?
It's good. it's always going to be good. The only problem is like the commitment to the sideboard. Like you're siding in 6 cards. Now, to be fair, these six cards you're putting in, like the thrust, you now have a set target for every matchup virtually, right?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have the set target for everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely worth considering putting in for sure. And I got inspired to play thrust in the first place from Kenny Nguyen, who's an American player, and it's just being able to answer it a Molchummy or something in the draw phase. I think is why it's really important. So I'm a fan. I could get behind playing a 6-card or 5-card thrust package. I think it's definitely, I'd rather play that over Crossout Designator, because like I said, you got to play, like imagine if we wanted to play Crossout right now, that would mess up our entire main deck and sideboard. Like we're gonna have to play like random BM ratios. So I'm a fan. I definitely would lead towards thrust more.
Right. Corey, thrust package, Jay?
I'd also lean towards the thrust package because thrust has like thrust post games 1 and 2 would let me side out like 2 copies of talents for like a couple copies of thrust plus like whatever target for the matchup. As well as like siding out other cards. The only thing is I'm not sold on Simul Archfiends being like the set target for Maliss, because like I mentioned earlier, you can also just go like thrust set Sanctum for Lancia.
Oh yeah,
Lancia then.
to Lancia, yep.
You're already
True.
Yeah.
That's actually probably better. Actually.
But the only like downfall of that theory is that you're giving them 2 chances to draw Ash Blossom in their opener for the thrust,
they can draw a 6
and
card,
return for the Sanctum.
Yep, that is true.
I think I'd still, it's probably, I think I'd rather play the Sanctum, to be honest, personally.
Yeah, it definitely goes in over it, but like that's just like the trade-off, because like that's the same argument currently as to, do you play thrust plus 1 barrier, or do you just play 3 barriers so that way you can't like get it ashed?
Got it. Interesting. All right, so we're
I think with the format, I think with the format being so wide in some ways, potentially for this YCS especially, like people are going to be, let's not forget, people are going to be playing the old decks for sure. So I think it's worth taking a gamble to play like a wide range of thrust targets than like just 3D barrier.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I don't know that like 3 thrust would necessarily be correct. It might be like 1 call by 2 thrust and then like the Sanctum plus the D barrier as like your 2 targets. Because any matchup where DDG would come in, you're just siding in Shifter anyway.
You're right. Yeah, you're putting in Shifter. All right. 2 last categories here, and we're gonna analyze them simultaneously because I think maybe we pick a couple from here. I'm not sure, to be honest. Floodgates. This is kind of an alternative for this in a way. Diffusers. And we have the 3 more popular we use apart from Diffusers, Tisibu, Skill Drain, Anti-Spell, which has seen some play lately. And the last category here, we have what there are other board breakers, because we talk about Evenly, we talk about Dark Ruler, so I don't think we need to cover it again, but we do have these 9 cards: Harpies, Lightning Storm, Droplet, and Cyclone. Any of these worth considering when we are really thinking about this? Like any of these options better, maybe interchangeable? How do we?
So I will say that I think Floodgates get noticeably worse after this new set comes out due to Ryzeal having like in-engine ways to deal with face-up cards, right, with Aggregator. So I'm not too sure I would play any Floodgates personally. Di-Fi, like that card has been so good this format, but it's going to be unplayable next format in my opinion, so I would not play it. Skill Drain, there can be like Anti-Spell. All of these cards are going to have problems into Ryzeal. Granted, you know, Anti-Spell, they have to hard. Actually, that's not true at all. They can draw so many ways.
No, they can just normal.
I personally would not play any continuous Floodgates. Due to Ryzeal. I think Harpies and Lightning Storm aren't that good. I would personally always prefer to play Cosmic Cyclones, but our sideboard is looking quite tight already as it is. You know, we're playing 6 to 7 thrust cards. We're playing 6 hand trap already. Like we probably are running low on sideboard space. So at that point, maybe you just play one Harpies and call it a day, or even one or two Cosmic Cyclone at that point.
Got it. Corey, how do you feel about it?
I'll start with the back row move. I'll go the opposite way. So I agree that like I think the one Harpies might make the deck list right along with like the thrusts to play in a way where all of our floodgates are chainable floodgates rather than it be like interactive pieces. And then when it comes to like continuous when it comes to like all the continuous like traps and stuff, those just get replaced by your one of thrust targets that do the same job.
Interesting.
And then Di-Fi gets noticeably worse as well.
Right.
I like I said, I will comment that I think Cosmic is worth thinking about as well, because Detonator is practically Dingirsu for card destruction effects. So, you know, if you can Cosmic trade with the field spell, like that's not bad. Like a Cosmic trading, it's like the idea of Cosmic against FKI. And if you can pair the Cosmic with like really a lot of any other board breakers, right? Like Cosmic plus another board breaker is actually going to deal with the Ryzeal board. So that it is worth thinking about. I just don't know in terms of side space if we have the space to play 3 Cosmic. But if we can, that'd be cool.
Well, there is a card actually, and it has one category I didn't mention earlier. These are more spicy, and these I grabbed from the OCG and from some ideas that Jojo mentioned in the past. So we have the card, in case of an emergency, we have a secret tech here. Alright? And this is gonna be the first one in here. It's gonna be a card that can also deal with the Ryzeal board quite well. And obviously the penalty has the quick play spell, but we have Ultimate Slayer that's being played right now in the OCG together with the Meteorologic Aggregator. How you guys feel about this?
Card's good. Like it's they don't. I think of the reason why it's as good as it will ever be is because we don't have that rank 4 monster that you showed earlier on. So in the OCG, what they're doing is they're able to attach that XYZ to the detonator, so that way they're able to still make an interruption after.
Combat.
Only because that rank 4 is in the game, because it reborns itself in another XYZ or something like that. So because we don't have that card for this YCS, I think that Ultimate Slayer will be as good as it ever can get for this event. So I'm a fan for it if you want it for Ryzeal. I want to see if it's good versus Maliss. Maybe we can play the Trouble Sunny Link 4, but that means you need to play the Brick, the Twins. But you know, it might be a pretty good call.
Interesting. Hey, what do you think, Corey? Yay, nay?
So with Ultimate Slayer, I was a fan of the card, but now at the same time, like in Ritual Beast specifically, basically every slot in the extra deck is spoken for, minus like 1. And so playing a target to send with Slayer is harder because limiting our extra deck limits our options to play into boards, as well as the fact that even though they can't respond with what you target, the Starliege XYZ still makes the Detonator untargetable. So the Slayer still would not be able to target it. So you would have to bounce the Starliege and then the Aggregator would negate the Ryzeal monster. But then when you go to negate, they chain its effect, pop it, and then plug in, summon it back, and your Slayer essentially.
This is why I was saying that, like, this is why I was saying that Nibiru, for example, is a card I'm really considering main decking or putting somewhere in the deck, because I think that a lot of the Ryzeal players who will, and fair enough, correctly might I add, play around 9 effect negation hand traps and Slayer, which is probably might be quite popular. I think that Nib is actually pretty decent in those cases.
All right. Now, we're talking about Ryzeal a lot, and there is sort of like a silver bullet, something that I saw people were doing in the OCG in the last couple of weeks. It's very weird, but I saw some people playing Mischief of the Gnomes. As you guys have never seen this card before, what it does is that it reduces the levels of all monsters in the hand by 1, and when it's in the graveyard you can banish it to reduce the levels of all monsters in the hand by 1. So it has basically 2 turns coverage, obviously a trap, normal trap going first. How you guys feel about more targeted like silver bullet stuff like this, or this card in particular?
Barrier's just better.
Yeah, it's just that no, it's just too niche. Like Barrier is just gonna do the exact same thing, and it's gonna hit way more matchups too.
Mischief of the Gnomes would be a card that you would likely see either Labyrinth or like random paleo gamers play as like a Morella send.
Yeah. All right. Now the best for last, and I'm gonna give you the board here, Jojo, because I'm sold on this card. No, I'm sold in your sales pitch about this card. Salesman, talk to me about. Let me read what it says. So you could declare a card name. For the rest of the turn, your opponent cannot activate the effect of that card. But this can apply for you for the rest of the duel. Would you declare the card name? You out it. Tell me, Jojo, you were talking a lot about this card. Why do we think this card might have some potential here?
Well, I think it's just really good into Ryzeal. It's pretty much the only board breaker that Ryzeal cannot play around, right? Like whatever they try to do, like you're going to hit the detonator. So even if they make the Photon rank 4, it's not going to matter. Granted, you'll still have to deal with the monster negate, so that's another conversation for itself. But I think if someone is wanting to adopt a more board breaker strategy instead of hand traps, this can be a fantastic board breaker to pair with anything else. Now, it isn't great into Malice, so that's a problem. But I think that it's worth exploring for sure. At least I think it's like I said, it's the only board breaker aside from like not even Kaijus or Lava Golems are gonna really work because they are plug-in. But yeah, Salesman I thought it was just neat that it's essentially the only board breaker that Ryzeal has no way to play around. Even Book of Eclipse, the detonator can just pop itself and plug and bring it back, right? So I think it's interesting. And then like at the end of the day, going second into any board with Salesman, like it's gonna be a 1-for-1 trade and negate. It's gonna force a response from the opponent. If you call Hermetic Seals, I don't know, if you call Phantom, if you call any sort of card, really, it's just, I thought it was a neat tech. It's like weird. It's like an imperm, but it's also, it's just a great trade. And so I think it's worth exploring for sure.
Well, what do you think, Corey? You sold also?
I can't lie. When he mentioned it in what I've described to my friends as the Ritual Beast Illuminati, I was like, hold on, this card's kind of nice because not only because like when you call Detonator with it, you've essentially played through 6 disruptions with 1 card.
Yeah, it's insane.
But to touch on like the other matchups, when you're going second into like Malice, I said earlier when I was describing the deck that they end on the Reborn trap to summon Whitebinder, which gets them their follow-up. If you just call Whitebinder, then like they can like Reborn into like something else, but it doesn't get them nearly as far. Like they can summon White Rabbit, set like the Search Trap. But the problem with Malice is that they do have the Deceive Worm in the graveyard to just negate the Sales Ban. But then like against like Fire King Snake Eye, you can call the Big Chicken. Whether that to you is the Sacred Grunix in the graveyard or the Grunix XYZ out of the extra deck, it depends on what matters the most to what you're trying to do into their board state based on what they have. And another thing that I like about it is that it's right now the list that I'm enjoying the most is like kind of a board breaker variant, but all of my breakers double as go first cards, that being Eclipse, Talents, and Sales Ban. Because I played against someone last night and he ashed me. I like Talents looked at his hand, ripped his imperm, and then Sales Ban Nibiru and combo.
Yeah, it's got utility for sure going first. That's why I liked it as well. So, and I think it's even got more utility if you play it with Talent, which I've never been a fan of personally.
It's insane.
Why?
Yeah, just like just playing with the most information, and then also to double back to like our side theory is that hypothetically you could thrust search it, but like you'd probably just search Talents at that rate.
Did you find that with that board breaker build that you had, how was your Malice matchup?
The Malice matchup I played twice, and it honestly just kind of turned into like a Lancia fest back and forth. But like I stuck in SP, and then like every time they use an effect, I tagged it out, and then like I'd Lancia them, and then they'd stop, and I'd get the SP back, and then they'd Lancia me back. I'd beat over their guy, I'd pass back to them, and it just became who ran out of Lancias first.
Oh my god!
Because I feel like the board breaker build is going to be a bit more challenging, like with the non-engine that you just described against Maliss.
Yeah, which is why out of the side deck, like you would like you'd have to be able to take out like the Book of Eclipses. I think the sales ban and talents are fine because like if you sales ban and they like Terahertz to negate it, then you can just like talents take their dude and continue from there. It depends on the board they make too, because like I've heard some rumblings from Maliss players that they want to end on a Heat Soul board rather than a Terahertz board, and I'm like, I don't know why, but sure.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Terahertz seems so much better.
I think that the better players will gravitate naturally towards Maliss just because of the skill expression.
Yeah, the skill expression, exactly. I agree. All right. I really like this because we start with look how many cards we start with, and we come up with some really cool like options in here. And I think this is definitely 15 cards can be taken from here super easily and has a very decent side deck. And we has a lot of really good insight. You know, I was thinking the Floodgate approach against the TTTs was very interesting approach too. Now we mentioned a lot of cards in here. For the side deck, for the extra deck, and for the main deck, is there a card that we haven't touched that you guys are considering? Any last conclusions that you guys have in mind?
Particularly that I can think of.
I don't think so either. Like that's basically everything that I thought about touching on.
Perfect. Now, last thing to ask you guys. It is Anaheim. Okay, it's December 7th. Round 1, you are able to go full combo. What are you setting up? Are we doing Protoss? Protoss for what? Are we doing Baguska? What are we doing?
If I get the full combo round 1, I'm definitely just like Protoss calling Dark. Because in my opinion, in my opinion, that covers the most. The only thing it doesn't cover is Ryzeal, because like I always like to go for like a Gaia Pelio with like 2 to 3 negates and then Protoss call Dark, because Gaia Pelio handles the rest. Because the Protoss for Dark covers the Azamina engine, covers Black Witch, it covers Yubel, it covers Maliss.
Yeah.
I agree.
So,
I would go for the exact same strat, to be honest. I would just blind call Dark. And what's good is if you can set up the Gaia Pelio with the Nochi Drago, it means that even if you queue into Ryzeal, they're going to have to, like, let's say they start off with the green Ryzeal that dumps from the extra deck. Like, they're going to have to burn Aggregate and negate, target negate on Nochi Drago first, in which you can just tag out into Link 4, right? So, yeah, I think the god board for me is always just Steeds, Protoss, Nochi Drago, and Gaia Pelio. Like, that's just the FTK board. It's the nuts. So I'm always just going for that. And then obviously post side, if you know they're on fire or whatever, you can just do that accordingly. Yeah.
Interesting. Because we are saying Protoss Dark, we say we also like IP, bro.
I think the thing about Ritual Beast that like makes it playable into the next format, in my opinion, is like you usually are guaranteed to lock up at least one game post side, and so you just need to get like 1 out of 2 between games 1 and 2, rather than your opponent not knowing the matchup, or like you blind called the right thing, because when you go first and you're built to go first, you probably just win those games because the deck does just FTK.
I think it's true, but it'll be interesting to see how it changes when Lancey's in everyone's side decks, which will be
that's gonna be painful. All right,
just stack the Lancias to the bottom. It's fine.
Just stack the bottom. All right, so we covered everything, and literally I feel we went through everything that we need to know about crossover breaker, and I really like, because I feel this was very in depth, very in detail. You know, talk about a lot of cards. We have pretty much a deck list, pretty much 2 side decks. We have to assign merge into one, and we have the extra deck, almost 15 exactly cards with the side deck. So now before we end up the conversation, any last thing that you guys want to mention about the deck? Anything you have in mind that we haven't touched?
No, I think we covered everything. It was a good solid 2 hours.
Yeah,
I think it's just at that point more testing. Do we want to play hand traps? Do we want to play board breakers? Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I think there's plenty here for us as well as any Ritual Beast players watching this to go through and test out. And like, I do highly recommend if you're testing on Dueling Book to just have like 5 different versions of the deck built with random non-engine. To just be able to switch back and forth and see which ones are testing better and track which cards are performing the best, because it might be the 6th build you haven't built yet where like you're crossing this card from version 3 into version 5.
I do agree. I think a lot of testing is needed, because I did notice that at least for the cards that we're thinking flex posts and side deck, we have like some suspects, but we don't have a concrete idea, you know. Now, before we end the video, I want to give you guys an opportunity. I know Jojo, I know you have a YouTube channel where you have covered the deck before. How can people reach out to you, and how can people watch the YouTube channel you're on?
You can just check out Top Deck. That's I just upload Yu-Gi-Oh content there for fun when I'm not whispering into a microphone. So if you want to check out Yu-Gi-Oh content, you can check that out.
Perfect. Corey, how people can reach out to you? How can people get in touch?
Not to like put myself on blast, but people can just find me on Facebook. Last name Bown, BOWN. I've had plenty of people from the various regionals I've attended who play Ritual Beast, or like I played against, who like picked up the deck after I beat them with it and like messaged me for advice on like what to play. I'm always open to like answering questions and like bantering back and forth about the deck, because like I've taken a very special interest in it since I started playing it at Nationals this past year. Cause like I played it back in Necross format, but I was just a kid then, and now I have much more understanding of the game and being able to simplify game states, and I find that really fun with the deck.
Yeah, I totally, and I feel it's kind of weird because, you know, obviously deck is not exactly getting better, but I feel very eager to try to figure it out. You know, it seems like a puzzle, and we do have the pieces. We just need to know where to put them and how many of them to play, you know? All right, so I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the video, please go ahead and give it a like. If you have any questions whatsoever about any of the cards that we touch, maybe a card that we didn't touch, put it in the comments below, and I'm gonna go ahead and look at the questions. If I don't know the answer, I'm gonna reach out to one of the 2 experts to get the answer from them. So thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. We have way more content about Ritual Beast in the channel, and we're gonna keep making content through crossover breakers. So the format pan out, we're gonna go ahead and be there for it. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. See you.